In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the headlights on this Ford F-350, and we're going to upgrade them for the performance headlights. I'll show you how to wire everything in. There are a couple wires to be connected, and they go to these LEDs right here. So let's get started. To remove the headlight, we actually have to remove the side marker and the directional assembly right here. These are both one piece. There are two screws underneath, so let's get to those. Right here are the two screws that I was talking about. Use a Phillips head screwdriver and remove them both. At this point, all you'll have to do is pull away. There are some pins that hold this in, and it might look like you're breaking it, but it's pretty sturdy, and it really just has to pop out. There's one. And there's the other. Okay, now you can't go very far with this. I'm actually going to have to reach right behind it because the bulbs have a very short harness. So I'm going to try to unplug these. So I got the turn signal unplugged. I'll show you in a second how that goes. And for this, I'm just going to twist it counterclockwise and unplug it. So this right here is the one I twisted out. And this directional / running light bulb, there are supposed to be two tabs on this connector that lock in here and here. Mine are completely broken, but you're supposed to be able to pry them away, push out on the connector. I'm going to remove the socket by turning it counterclockwise. We'll be reusing the socket, but I will be replacing the bulb. So I'll just take this and pop it out. I'm going to take the new bulb provided with the headlights. It's a 3157. Clip that in and we'll save this for later. From the top of the headlight, we have two clips here and here that need to be pried up in order to release the rest of the headlight. The best way I've found to remove these clips is with a pick. You want to pry up on the top. Now, you want to be careful because, I'll show you once this is off, on the sides there are tabs that actually lock this in. And you want to, if they're locked in, which they're not always, you need to pry these out and then up. Oh, there we go. That one broke free. Let's go the other way. It looks like this is coming up, so that's great. Try not to let this go flying and lose it. There we go. So this is what the clip looks like. And as you can see, it has these tabs that lock in to the plastic piece on the back of the headlight. And if you don't pry these away, you could actually either break these, or as you're prying up, you'll break the top. You want to be careful, and of course, if these are in poor condition, this is all that holds your headlight in at the top, so you want to source new clips. We'll do the same thing on this one. Oh, there we go. So the headlight pops out now. Now the headlight pops out. There is one more retainer on the back of the headlight right here, and if you go behind it, you can see the retainer right down there, and we basically have to pinch the two tabs that are on each side and then pop it out. That's what's going to unlock the headlight. Okay, there it is. If you flip it around, you can get to the electrical connector for the bulb, and you gotta twist this collar off, and then you can reach the two prongs. If you have a screwdriver to help you out, lift those two and pop the plug off. Okay, we're going to take this collar, we don't need that, and there's the old headlight. Now we have to do a little bit of wiring because the LEDs for the headlights have to be wired onto your marker light. So you have two options here. You could either use this wiring and bulb right here, which is what I'm going to do because it's very simple. There are just two wires and they're the only two you need. Or you could wire it to this, the turn signal and marker light assembly. This has three wires, so you have to figure out which one you need. You don't want your LEDs blinking, so obviously you're not gonna wanna wire it to the turn signal. So because it's a lot easier and there's no guesswork, I'm just going to take this bulb socket out by pressing on this tab. I'm gonna fish this harness down here so I can take it out through this wider opening. And once I do that, I'm able to have access to more wire so I can cut it back, splice in my harness, and go from there. I'm going to peel back the electrical tape on here. I'm going to peel back the wire loom. Now we have these two wires. One's brown, one's black. Black's going to be ground, brown is going to be power. That's exactly how I'm going to wire the LEDs in. I don't want to hardwire the headlight into this harness. That way it's removable if needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some spare wire that I have that's the same gauge as this. I'm going to cut this, both wires actually, and I will make one wire going into a connector, two coming out, kind of like a split. One wire will go into this plug and another one will lead to my headlight. So to better demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to show you exactly by doing it. I'm going to cut these staggered. That way my connections don't overlap and it's going to be easier to wrap it back up without having this massive bulge in the middle. I'm going to peel back some of the insulation. I'm going to do that on this side as well. At this point, you can use different types of connectors. You can use spade connectors, you can use heat shrink solder connectors, which is what I'm going to use, or you could use a butt connector and crimp it all together. So I'm going to take my wire from the plug and put my extension harness on it. I'm going to wrap these two together, just like that. And at this point, I obviously have to make sure that the correct wires are getting connected together. So this is the brown wire and the brown wire. This is my power supply. Okay, once I have these wrapped together, I'm going to slide my heat shrink solder connector over, and with the help of a heat gun, melt it all together. Now we're going to let it cool off. Now we'll do the same thing on this other wire. I have my extension harness. I'm going to connect it to the connector or the plug side of the harness. Twist those together. Now connect it all together. All right, wait for it to cool down. With my extension harness connected, I'm going to tuck this back into the wire loom. And this is exactly why I chose to stagger this, so that it can actually fit in here. And now I'm going to electrical tape all this back up so it can be nice and secure. Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to route this back to where it was. And I got my extension harness right here. So now we can connect the headlight side to this. On this end, I'm going to put spade connectors. That way the headlight can be easily disconnected when needed without cutting any wires. So I'm going to take the insulation off on both wires. Polarity does matter, so we'll have to find out which one of these is positive and which one's negative, unless you marked your wires or color-coded them somehow. However, we can easily find that out when we plug it in, because it won't work if it's backwards, so when we plug it in, we'll just double check. For these, I am using crimp-on heat shrink connectors. So I'm going to slide this in, crimp it on. If you're using heat shrink crimp-on connectors, make sure you have heat shrink crimping pliers, otherwise it will pierce through the sheathing of the connector and it will go bad. Clip that on, make sure it's a good solid connection, and do the same to this one. Crimp that down tight, double check it, and now, because these are heat shrink connectors, we're going to heat shrink these. We'll let these cool down, and then we'll put the other end of these spade connectors on the headlight side. This is the headlight side, and the wires themselves are a little thinner, so a little trick is to cut it extra long and then fold it over onto itself. That's going to give a much larger area for the connector to crimp on. So So I got both ends on the headlight side crimped on, and I know I had to change connectors a little bit because the ones that I had before didn't quite grab onto the wire like I want it to, and that's why it's very important to check your connections when you crimp them so they don't fall off after you're done. Now, because these are non-heat shrink connectors, I'm going to put some heat shrink over them so I can seal everything up perfectly. And I have a piece that's extra long so it can go over both ends. I'm not going to shrink it yet because we need to plug it in, double check that we have it plugged in correctly, and then we can shrink it. I'm going to connect it this way. Once again, I am unsure of which wire is which just because I use the same color wire on both terminals. I'm going to put the headlight over here. If I flip the switch and these LEDs turn on, that means we have it wired right. I got it right, so let's heat shrink this. I'm going to make sure the connectors are plugged in completely. And with the help of the heat gun, shrink it down. I know what you're saying, this isn't easily removable, disconnectable that is, but it is because all you have to do is cut the heat shrink instead of cut the wire. And then you can unplug the spade connector, and when you're ready to put it back together, you just put a new piece of heat shrink on, and this way it's going to be perfectly waterproof for a very long time. I'm going to wrap this up in some electrical tape, leaving this exposed because it's sealed up and I want to make sure that this connection is visible. But I will tie these wires together as well as these and wrap them in some electrical tape so that they're nice and protected and held in together as a harness. And here's the final result. Nice clean harness. This one here, I also electrical taped just because the wires were all separate. So now we can plug everything in and install the headlight. Before I install this, I just want to point out that this right here is the adjuster for your headlight. This is where you're going to want to aim your beam up and down once you're done. Having said that, let's reinstall the bulbs that go in at the bottom. Line this one up, whichever direction it wants to line up. There we go. Turn it to lock it in place. We'll do the same with this one over here. Turn it to lock it. Plug in the main headlight bulb connector. Tuck it back there. And these two, I can't really show plugging them in because the headlight has to be so close. Make sure that this wiring harness isn't getting pinched right here. Make sure it's running up and over. Line up the headlight to the top tabs. Check for any wires that they don't get pinched. It should somewhat lock into place. These two tabs at the top should want to stay. Now we're going to take the two clips that go from up top and slide them in. I found this easiest to do if you have a sturdy magnet that you can slide them down with. Push in on the headlight to make sure that it's going to line up with that slot. Tap it down. These are both locked, and to adjust the headlight, you'd go right through here. That right there is the adjuster. Use a Phillips head screwdriver and aim your beam up or down. Of course, you want to do this to both headlights. With the top installed, let's get the two screws back in. Snug these up. And there you have it. Test out the light and make sure everything works.
Now we're going to get the vehicle ready to aim the headlights. Start with the tire pressure, making sure all 4 tires are set at the appropriate pressure. Remove any excessive weight that's not normally in the vehicle. Find a wall that you can drive up to where the ground is level. Measure 25 feet away from that wall and mark the ground. Drive your vehicle up to that mark. With the headlights off, look for the center dot in the headlight lens. Measure from the ground to that center dot. You can use a ruler to help you out. Transferring that measurement to the wall, making a mark with some tape. On the driver's side, measure down 4 inches, putting another piece of tape. For the passenger side, you only need to measure down 2 inches. Now turning the headlights on, it is easier to do this at night or in a dark area. Locating your headlight adjuster and using a Phillips head screwdriver, turn your adjuster one way or another to bring the headlight up or down. Once the headlight is adjusted to the tape mark on the wall, move on to the next headlight. If you're confused because the beams seem to blend together, you can always have someone stand in front of the other headlight while you make your adjustments for that one. Now your headlights are aligned and you're all set to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.